Excuse me, everyone. Can we go ahead and get seated so we can start the session? A lot of good information during this session. And I do not want to stand between you and lunch with the experts. Come on in, folks. We're about to get started. Dr. Fadum, come on in and join us. Come on in and join us, please. Hey, Dave, bring him in. You didn't record that, did you? Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. This session is on improving kidney care and treatment options. And during the session, we're going to talk about the Kidney Precision Medicine Project and whatever Dr. Starr is going to present to us today. I'm Richard Knight, Vice President, Chair of Public Policy. I want to thank you for joining us for this session on improving kidney care and treatment options. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker, and I have the pleasure of working with him on a regular basis as he leads the effort over at the National Institute of Health's the Kidney Precision Medicine Project. Dr. Starr is director of the Division of Kidney, Urologic, Hematologic Diseases at NIH. His division supports research on important health problems, including chronic kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, acute kidney injury, and much more. Dr. Starr provides researchers with resources to advance the study of kidney disease and bring about innovations in kidney care. I can continue, but I'm going to let you tell you himself about some of the things that he's working on. But before he does, I just want to add on a much more personal note, Dr. Starr has invited myself and many other patients to be an integral part of what's going on. Many things that you heard in the sessions yesterday about issues with patient involvement or the lack thereof, I think he's cracked the code, and hopefully he'll get to some of that as he talks about the project. Dr. Starr?
So I'm really happy to be here, and I want to thank Richard Knight, Paul Conway, and a variety of other people that I'll get to in a minute for inviting me and for helping us get to this point. Outside on the way in, there are a couple sheets. One of them looks like this that says, I'm learning, so I'm here to learn, and at the end of this talk, I want to be able to fill in a couple points on this picture. So I think it's really important. This is a dialogue. I will talk for a little bit, obviously. So when I say me or I or we, what I really mean is a whole group of people that are putting this project together. And in particular, I want to start with, I don't know, 20 or 30 or so patients that are part of it. And so can I get people raise your hand if you're in this project, because I know a couple of you are. Okay. The next question I want to ask is, how many of you have had a biopsy, kidney biopsy, of a non-transplanted kidney? Sorry, non-transplanted kidney. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. How many of you think maybe you should have had a biopsy? Okay. All right, now stretch your hand a little bit more. We're going to get to that stretch part towards the end of this talk. Okay, so this is a very large project, 20 or 30 patients, 100 scientists, and 30 or so various people involved in oversight of the project. So let's go into the details. So where are we? So a very, very simple, oversimplified view of nephrology right in 2018 is that we have two major diseases, chronic kidney disease that this group mostly focuses on, as well as acute kidney injury, and I'm doing a breakout session on AKI after this to advertise it a bit. And the problem is that for CKD, we really only have 2 drugs. We have ACE and ARBs, which many of you, I suspect, are on. And at some point soon, the FDA will probably approve an SGLT2 inhibitor for chronic kidney disease. But that's it. For acute kidney injury, which usually happens where the kidneys are poisoned in the hospital, we have 2 things. We give fluids and we wait. This is not the situation that we want to be in. Now, we do have dialysis, which of course keeps people alive, but that's not what we want. What we really want is to fill up this white space with more drugs. So if you're a drug company, you look at this diagram and you go, wow, there's a lot of white space, there's a lot of room to maneuver. If you're a patient, you look at this and you go, oh my God, there's nothing there for me. Now, there's a problem with this slide, and that is that CKD is actually more complicated. It's a basket of diseases. Just to give you, so these really should be plural. CKD should be CKDs, AKI should be plural AKIs. To give you an example, diabetic kidney disease comes in many forms. This is a slide that Kathy Tuttle made that shows from a pathologist's point of view different kinds of diabetic nephropathy. The only point here is that despite having what look like multiple types of diabetic nephropathy, everybody gets labeled with the same thing and gets treated exactly the same way with an ACE or ARB inhibitor. There's a convergence, even though we're in this tangled, messy space, everybody gets treated exactly the same. So where are we? I don't have to tell this group that these kidney diseases are major health problems. You've been driving home that message to Congress. Chronic kidney disease is the other silent killer. So it's cardiovascular disease and kidney disease. As I've said, we have few treatments. What I haven't said is that drug development in this space has largely stalled. Why? In part because we don't understand human chronic kidney disease. If you're a mouse or a rat, boy, we have 50 treatments for you that work. But you're not, and we know that. So there's something obviously different between what we study in the lab and what helps patients. This translational pipeline isn't working. There's a valley of death in the middle. Now, what do you folks really want to know? And what do I want to know as a treating physician? What I want to know is, as a patient, what do I have? What's going to happen to me, and what can I do about it? Okay, we've heard this time and time again. It becomes the mantra, but it's important that we have to be able to answer these questions, not just put everybody on an ACE and ARB inhibitor and tell you to come back in 2 years. We really prefer what's called now a precision medicine approach, and you folks are going to be talking more about this tomorrow, so I want to set this up a little bit. What this means is getting the right drug into the right patient at the right time. Personalized approach. What do I have? What do I need to take? What do I need to do? So how are we going to get there? Well, you know, if you're a Trekkie fan, which I'm not, but if you are, you would know that this is Bones, the physician, and he has this tricorder device that he's holding, and he scans the patient, and it tells him what the patient has and tells what to do. And there's an episode where they scanned a patient on dialysis, and he wondered, what's this primitive technology? Why are you doing this? Let me scan you. And the thing says, well, here, take these 2 pills, and call me back in the morning, you have a new kidney. We're not there yet, and the Kidney X project has pieces of this, and we have a Rebuild a Kidney project that has pieces of this, but we're not there yet. So, but what could be the future, meaning the next 5 to 10 years? So let me try and outline that. And as you go to your doctor, he does some simple blood tests, urine tests. Your kidney is scanned for areas of injury or fibrosis by some MRI fusion thing. And then you have a guided kidney biopsy that goes maybe after the good part of the kidney and maybe after the not so good part of the kidney. The biopsy is then analyzed using something that I'll talk about called the Kidney Tissue Atlas, which tells the pathologist finally what cells are where, because at the moment we're just looking at patterns of injury, not what specific cells are involved, nor do we know what the cells are thinking. The Kidney Atlas will help us understand what's where, what's gone wrong, what are the important pathways in that particular patient, to suggest what we can do about it. So this is the diagnosis subgroup prognosis piece, and then select the drug, okay, based on that particular patient's biopsy. Not just you have diabetic kidney disease, take an ACE or ARB, and start individualized treatment. So this is personalized medicine. That's where we'd like to be. So how do we get there? Now, 2 of you, 3 of you in the room have seen this already, but for the rest that haven't, anybody know what this is? Usually nobody knows. A what? Copying machine. No. I'll give you a clue. You either have one in your pocket, your pocketbook, or it's on the table, or you're texting on it right now. Okay. This is the first digital camera. It was produced by Kodak engineers. The Kodak hierarchy decided to shelve the project because they said, we don't need one of these. Nobody will ever use it. Besides, it will eat into our film sales. So they shelved it. Somebody else went on and discovered it again and made millions. And of course, Kodak now disappeared. Okay, so the question is, how do we do this? So innovation, there are many, many books written on it. Innovation, as Richard can tell you, is very complex. Not only do you need to be a scientist and come up with an innovative product, the fresher lemonade, that's actually the easy part. The harder part is what's not well understood, is that the innovator has to create a market for their new innovation, hard lemonade. Okay, you know, when the cell phone, when the digital cameras first came out, it wasn't clear who was going to use them, and they were really expensive. Nobody used them. Now everybody uses them because that market's been made. So what does this have to do with what I'm talking about? What I'm going to talk to you about the next couple slides is essentially how do we make a market for getting a kidney biopsy? Because at the moment, almost nobody in the room has had a kidney biopsy on your regular kidney. Okay. So the project that I want to talk to you about where we intend to do this is this, as Richard talked about, this kidney precision medicine project. And it is a 10 to 15 year project. This is not a 3-year project sponsored by a pharmaceutical company to immediately help, because we can't do it in that time frame. The idea here is to understand and treat human kidney diseases, the diseases that you have. How? By ethically and safely obtaining a kidney biopsy, using that tissue to understand the biology, what went wrong, find from that tissue the different kinds of CKD and AKI, the subgroups, stratify patients, find what cells are causing a problem, what pathways in those cells have gone wrong, gone haywire, finding new targets and new drugs for those targets, okay? This is individualized therapy, improving the scientific knowledge base, improves the pipeline of discoveries in the kidney field. The other thing it does is it brings more talent back into the kidney area. That's a whole separate issue, which I can talk about later if somebody asks. So this is a really ambitious, quite frankly audacious project. And we need to change a lot of things. And the scientists, the 100 scientists in the room, are mostly focusing on technology, right? Glenda, they're talking about technology. How do we do this and how do we do that? But when my staff looked at this project as we were putting it together 3 years ago, we decided that there's actually a harder problem here that we have to crack. There's this statement, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. This is an example of this kind of project because the cultural changes that we need to make are on this slide. So let me start. You can start anywhere because they're linked, but let's start here. Through this kidney tissue atlas, we're going to create what's really a new pathology, which I will show you on some slides, but it's new ways of looking at kidney tissue that are 10 times more complex than what we're doing right now. This will help the pathologist finally say not just what's there, but make some predictions about what could happen to the patient and what the patient ought to take. This will help the nephrologist individualize therapy, find the right therapy for that right patient at that right time. And then suddenly the biopsies will actually become useful because right now they're of somewhat limited use. So it involves changes to pathologists, nephrologists, and patients. So these are all linked. This is the culture change that we have to do. From nephrologists not doing biopsies, this started 40 years ago. It was a mistake that the field made 40 years ago. They thought that nephrologists thought they were really smart. They could take care of their patients without a kidney biopsy. That turned out not to work as we speed forward 40 years. So we have to replace that culture with a whole new culture. And notice that the patients are at the top of this pyramid. There's a reason for that. As Glenda and others in the room know, we want the patients to help drive the process, right? Okay. So what that requires is that people get a kidney biopsy. Now, many of you have had a kidney biopsy to your transplant. Put your hands up again. Stretch. Okay, we're going to get to that stretch thing. Stretch the other side, would you? I take yoga. You got to do both sides. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So a kidney biopsy is a small sliver, about 3/4 of an inch long, that is done sometimes in the hospital, sometimes in a clinic under ultrasound guidance, so you get to the kidney and not some other organ. And we did have a discussion at the first meeting about the ethics of doing a kidney biopsy, because to the individual patient right now, it's of somewhat limited benefit. We can occasionally find things that we didn't suspect were there. Cholesterol deposits indicating atheroembolic disease to the kidney, or some crystals indicating various kidney stone kinds of things. But that doesn't happen very often. But if we get a lot of these biopsies, suddenly we can pool the information all together, and then it helps the whole community. So there's an element of altruism here for the people who are first in this study. There is risk. There are risks of bleeding, of pain, every once in a while of losing a kidney. There is a small but finite risk of death. It's about 3 in 10,000 patients or so. So we are aware of this, but in order to move forward, we've talked to ethicists, and they said that you can do a kidney biopsy under these circumstances as long as there's a reasonable expectation that you'll find something out that's useful. We've waited 15 years to do this project, waiting for the technology to get ready to understand what's going on in the kidney, and that the risks have to be in relation to anticipated benefit, and we need informed consent. We'll come back to that. So what we need to do over time, and this is the culture change, is build a case for that a biopsy will actually be useful. We'll stop calling it a research biopsy, and we'll start calling it a clinical biopsy, because patients will benefit from the biopsy because it'll help them target treatment. So this is what a kidney biopsy looks like right now. If you stain it, you can get a couple ideas of where a couple proteins are. It's basically unidimensional, one color. This is what we'd like to be. Well, not quite. I stole this off the internet. Must be true. But we would like to be able to use multicolored imaging. I will get to that piece. And in fact, this is some images, again, stolen off the internet, but these at least ring somewhat true, of what the kidney biopsy of the future might look like, where we're staining multiple proteins, multiple signaling molecules at once that actually give us information about what's going on in that biopsy that was taken from a particular person. In some parts of the kidney, we'll probably need to do this in 3 dimensions, just because the structures are so packed together that it's hard to see on these thin slices what's going on, technical detail. Okay. The next 2 slides I've put in just to give you some idea of how we're going to do this. I've tried to keep this as simple as possible, but this is the sort of spoiler alert. If you want to take a quick nap, that's fine, but I don't think you'll need to. Yeah, okay? So the main scientific piece of this is the kidney tissue atlas. This is a multidimensional, organized, open, accessible thing that you can query. Okay, so how do we make it? What we do is we take a kidney biopsy and then bust it apart into its pieces, disaggregate into all the different cells, the different pieces between the cells, and using a variety of different complex methods, figure out what's there. What's there where is it, and what's changed. And we have good examples of doing this in animal tissue and limited in some human tissue now. So we know how to do this piece more or less. The second part is the harder part, and this is the actually really ambitious part of this project, is to take all that information, tie it together with what happened to the patient, following the patient for 2, 4, 5, even 10 years, looking at the rates of progression, tie that back into what we saw into the kidney biopsy. That's called correlating with clinical outcomes, to allow us to arrive at this individualized diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment. So the first part of this was the easy part, visual display of spatial data. The second part is the stratification markers for clinical decisions. How do we use these information for clinical decision making? Sort of like in a breast biopsy, HER2 is important because it tells you what caused the breast cancer in that patient, and you use an HER2 inhibitor to put the patient on. So that's what we're trying to do in kidney disease. Now, for those of you, including, frankly, most of the scientists I've shown this to, so don't feel bad if you don't understand what I just said, I've cooked it down to make it even easier. And I did this on purpose. So you go on a hike outside and you come across this leaf. It's green. And you go to your book, and there's a book that says, yes, it's a leaf, and it tells you where the chlorophyll is, and it tells you where the stem is, and the various parts of the leaf. But that's of limited help, because that's not what you want to know. You don't want to know this is a leaf. You want to know what happens if I touch it. So here's where you need your leaf identification guide that tells you that that's poison ivy. If you touch it, that's the diagnosis, poison ivy. Prognosis, if you touch it, you're going to itch. Treatment, topical steroids or antihistamine or something. So what we're talking about here in simple terms is this kidney tissue atlas is the same as the leaf identification guide. Everybody with me? Any questions? Okay. How do we do it? Again, I'll go through this quickly. We get biopsy done ethically, done safely, using checklists and people who know what they're doing, ultrasound guidance. Bust the tissue apart, as I said. Then create markers, create antibodies that allow us to stain the different components that we're looking at. And first thing we want to do is find all the cells. So to do that, we made markers to the cells that we know about. There's somebody, one of our investigators is doing this. He's found that there are about 60 or so different cell types in the kidney, of which about 40 are there to begin with, another 20 are circulating white cells. So he's found markers to a number of the cells, but he's discovered 2 new cell types, cell type A and cell type B, that no one had ever found before. Okay? So what we need to do is to figure out, well, what do we know about? And then look at the dark matter. Remember, in the universe, there's all this dark matter between galaxies. That's what we're looking for. We have to find the dark matter, find the parts that we don't understand, put that back into this analytic pipeline, and try again until we can mark all the different cell types in the kidney. The other thing we want to know is the cell state. Is this a healthy cell? Is it an injured cell? Is it undergoing repair? Is it too far gone? Forget about it. Is it involved in fibrosis? We want to find out the pathways, what's causing the cell to be injured, and is there something we can do about it, add the patient information on part of it, and all of this is the kidney tissue atlas. Okay, that's it for the hard technology part of this talk. But getting a group of 100 scientists together to work together is not so easy either, right? Richard knows this. So the group is organized into recruitment sites. These are the 6 sites that are going to recruit patients. There are 5 sites that are going to take the tissue and break it apart into pieces and then put it back together. And then there's a central hub that's going to collect all the information. So these are the 100 scientists. But what's the unique part of this? And Richard stole my fire. Thank you, Richard. The unique part are the patients, the participants, the collaborators in this study. They have been there to tell us their story, to tell us what's it like to have kidney disease, what does that mean for them. We need them to tell us what's most important to them and to make sure that we stay ethically clean and are sensitive to all the cultural nuances. But that's not all. The other reason we want the patients, participants, collaborators there is we want them to push us. We want them to stay on track. They attend all the meetings. How many phone calls have you been on? How many meetings have you been to? Endless. Okay. What I try and do is I sit next to a patient every day of the meeting. I try and pick a different patient each day so that I can explain to the patient, right, what's going on. And it also forces me to listen and stay awake. And it forces me to assimilate a lot of information so that I can explain it to a patient, participant, collaborator. What I discovered in the process of doing it at the last meeting is that often the scientists don't understand what's going on either. And what I had to do at the end of a very complex session was stand up and say, okay, let me just tell you what I think I heard. And I tried to simplify it as possible. The lead pathologist for the study looked at me and said, God, thank you for doing that, right? Okay? So we really need the participants there. The participants, patients, collaborators have been completely engaged in all the work groups. They have their own work group that Richard co-leads with Kathy Tuttle, the KPMP Community Engagement Group, that has been decided that they wanted to be involved in the informed consent process. They wrote the first draft of the informed consent form, which will be wonderful because when we bring it to the central IRB and said this was written by patients, don't touch it, we think that will help. Okay. Now there are some challenges in this study, and the patients have pointed this out, and they've been absolutely correct. Challenge one is if I get a biopsy as part of this study that I really didn't need clinically, and I have a bleed, I need to stay in a hospital an extra day and be monitored, who's going to pay for that? Good question. The standard NIH, even industry consent form says we'll bill the patient's insurance first, and if the patient doesn't want to pay, we don't know what we'll do. So on the advice of the participants, patients, and with help from them, because some of them have been on IRBs and had worked closely with industry, we discovered there's a whole insurance market out there that none of us had any clue about. And NIH has been unable to tap over the last 20 years that I've been in NIH and 20 years before that. This may be the first study that actually has insurance for that will cover medical complications of a biopsy. No one's at fault. We know this happens from time to time. The kidney has blood vessels in it. It's going to bleed. The other part of this is, okay, so I have my bleed or I have a lot of pain and I'm out of work for 2 weeks. What's going to happen? So we're trying to find funding to pay patients for lost work and things like that. The other obvious part is to make sure that all the results that we get on an individual patient go back to that patient. The standard clinical stuff, creatinines, is easy to figure out. Genetic information, harder. There have been groups talking about that. All that fancy stuff, those last 2 slides, I don't know. We'll have to figure out how to do that so that it's interpretable to people. Paul Conway has come up with a communication plan, the initial communication plan for the group. The other thing we want the patients to do is to help us with recruitment and act as ambassadors. We'll get to that at the end. This project is completely unique at NIH. No one has ever done this, of involving patients in all of the committees, listening to them as full collaborators. End stop. That's what this is. And you know what? It's working. It's helping us. And as we've been talking to our other groups, colleagues at NIH, and explaining this model, we think we'll be seeing more of this. Okay, okay, now let's look at this question. Well, STAR, that's very nice and very interesting, but you know, why would I care about this? So let me give you 1 or 2 use cases. So let's say you're told by your nephrologist or internal medicine person or community health worker that you have diabetic nephropathy. What do? Well, the first thing you do is you go to the internet. Right? What does that mean, right? Okay, so right now, it probably tells you, go get an ACE and ARB, and that's about it. What we want it to do is, at some point, to say that, gee, you probably need a kidney biopsy, and here's why. So what we really want is the patient to inform patient to read the internet, understand, well, there's some new ways of dealing with this that weren't there 10 years ago. I want that. And go to the nephrologist and demand a kidney biopsy. If you were told you had cancer, would you not have a biopsy of that cancer? No. Okay, that's where we want to be. So get the biopsy, use this kidney tissue atlas, advanced pathology, to help figure out what do I have, what's going to happen to me, what can I do about it, and then do it. Okay. What we're really talking about here is, how am I doing on time, boss?
You okay?
I'm okay? Okay. We're talking about precision medicine. So you guys are going to talk about this tomorrow. Let me set this up again. So right now, when we do a clinical trial for chronic kidney disease, we're doing it on anybody who has this label, diabetic chronic kidney disease. And it's actually a hodgepodge of different diseases, hence the different colors in there. When we do the intervention, we get a small shift in some symptom or some outcome. And it's small because you're looking at a heterogeneous group, a group with many, many different kinds of diseases that are all lumped together, some of which respond to the drug, some of which don't. We'd like to be in this precision medicine environment where you test the patient ahead of time to see which subgroup they fall in, and then give them the treatment for that subgroup that hopefully will work better. This is precision medicine. How does it get done? It gets done in some bucket trial, basket trial, umbrella trial, where you have patients, a bunch of patients that look like they have chronic kidney disease. They go in, they get their biopsy, they figure out what bucket they're in, basket they're in, and then they get the individual therapy based on what was found in their biopsy. So patient A had pathway A activated, gets drug A. Patient B had pathway B activated, got drug B. Okay? That's the idea here. It completely changes the way we would be doing clinical trials. So back to this. What I'm showing you is the beta version of this project. It's going to evolve. We know this. We're building into the protocol expected evolution and how we're going to deal with the fact that the markers that we have in 2 years are going to be different than the markers we have in 5 years and 10 years. And okay, all right. So where I want to end is we need your help. Now, I've left this slide blank because I want to fill out this. I did make up this slide before I saw this part, but it fits perfectly. Okay, whoever made this, whoever did this, thank you. So what I want to have is a discussion with the group, because one thing I've learned is I don't tell patients anymore what I think. I ask, okay, you've heard the spiel, you've heard what this project is. What can you bring to the table? Because as we've learned, they're lawyers, they're business people, they're software engineers, they're people with a whole range of different activities that bring different eyeballs, different sets of ideas to this project. Our job, like AAKP, is to listen to the patient voices and learn. I'm done. Thank you. Thank you all for your attention. Please come up to the microphone. There's one here.
Well, I enjoyed this very much. This is decision support. And what can happen and why I would support this is that it can lower the cost of medical drug development. Because if you can identify, say, Group B has a likelihood of responding to a new drug and you don't have a whole bunch of other people in it, then the cost of doing research to develop Group B is going to be a lot less. If the cost of doing research on a drug is a lot less, then the price of that drug is also going to be less. So this has tremendous potential in healthcare. It's just overwhelming. And when you look at Dr. Watson in blue and what IBM is doing with some of the computer technology that this could feed into, it can really revolutionize medicine. So I want to thank you, and I'm very excited about it. Thanks.
Thank you. We are too, and I agree with, I would say, 90% of what you said. The only last part is to go look at the New York Times. I think it was yesterday, had an article on drug pricing.
Uh-oh.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Let's wait till we get to that bridge, Joe. But I just want to support what Dr. Fadum said, is that, first of all, thank you. And then I also want to say, too, is that patient engagement is the most overused term, but you get it. Because you spend time focused upon listening and understanding. And that's what most people don't do.
Right.
So you got that really well. The thing I would just say is, what can we do specifically, outline what your ask is? And my sense is that, you know, this is a culture issue from the science part, but it's a patient culture to solution. So I would just ask you to be very explicit what you're looking for and then how we can help support you.
Thank you. I mean, the reason I made that triangle slide with the circles was to try and nail what I had been thinking about as putting the project together, and where I saw the harder part. I mean, there are a bunch of scientific groups that are picking off the technology part of this, and they'll be able to do 5 or 10 or 20 patients, but to get to the cultural change, it's going to take 200 to 1,000 patients in our study.
Start making the request and don't let up.
I'm sorry?
I said, just start making the request. It will help you get
what I actually need, so one thing I need the patient participant collaborators to do is to continue to force us to open it up, what you just said. Force us to open it up, force us to get all the different groups involved, and put pressure on the other groups to get involved. The piece where I probably need the most help is to put pressure on the various companies that are funding different projects out there, and at some point agree that we're in, quote, pre-competitive space, and that we're all better off working together, not separately. Thank you.
Hi. I write about chronic kidney disease, the pre-dialysis, pre-transplant. How can I help my readers join in this? Who do they speak to?
So right now there are 6 recruitment sites. So let me give you a status update. We are about 9 months or so into this project. Most of the first 9 months of any big project like this is just getting people to begin to talk to each other and learn to work together. The group has actually come up with a protocol. It's 60, 80 pages long. They're coming the manual of operation, all the paperwork stuff that they need. But the good news is they're actually at that point. We're hoping to, quote, launch this around the time of ASN. I don't know if it will be before or after, but around the time of ASN. Then there will be 6 recruitment sites that are open looking for patients. So if you can drive patients to them, that would be great. I would hope we'll try and get more money for this project. That's a whole other issue, to open up more recruitment sites. I mean, we're sort of in the beta test. We got to get it to work on small numbers of patients first. We have a website. If you Google NIDD, or you can Google NIH space KPMP, it should be the top 1 or 2 hits. It's kpmp.org.
So would it be helpful to suggest to my readers that they speak to the nephrologists
Speak to the
about
nephrologists about this project. And nephrologists will go, I don't know what this project is. So, I mean, we're beginning to give talks. So thanks to Paul, we have a communication plan, right? We're, on the professional side, beginning to give talks at ASN, the American Society of Nephrology meeting. I've been giving talks here, at KHI, wherever. It's pretty much this talk at the moment. We've had a couple of sessions with the Kidney Caucus in Congress. Linda was there.
And we'll have the information up on our our website, Paul.
Yeah. So
We can
we're
put
sort
something
of.
up
I've been a
help
little bit
connect.
hesitant to do a full-scale publicity blitz until we had something to actually be able to talk about.
That was my next question. Am I being premature?
Well, yeah. I mean, Paul would say no. You can never be there, but right. But I would certainly be thinking about it, and we can work with how to do that. But I think ASN. I would say, by the time of ASN, this ought to be open. Okay, open for business.
Thank you.
My buddy.
Hi there.
Some people don't know when ASN is, so you need to tell them.
Sure. Sorry. This is the American Society of Nephrology. That's the large sort of scientific/professional group where there are a couple of professional groups in the renal community, ASN, American Society of Nephrology, National Kidney Fund. I guess those are the two major ones. There's some transplant ones. The American Society of Nephrology one where the nephrologists meet, it's about a 20,000 or so person meeting each year where the nephrologists present their scientific findings. That's where the new clinical trial results get presented in this field. And this is where your treating nephrologists usually go, here or National Kidney Foundation. Thank you. And it's in October, sometimes November. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's generally a week that they'll be out there. And, again, we'll have some reference. We'll have all that type of information up on the website, or we'll send out some information about it so you can be up to speed on it. Well, let me just make one other observation that, the patients have been sitting down and going through these webinars, looking at omnics and all other types of science. But the reality is that many of the researchers, when it's not their field, they have to sit down and go through the same thing. So it's very much a learning process for everybody. But the thing that I want to emphasize is that it truly is a change in culture, and it is what we talk about when we say patient engagement. They didn't come to us after the fact. They ask us to be there at the beginning. And many researchers don't deal with patients. Yeah. So we got a chance to have a reception. We mingled, the patients mingled with a lot of the researchers and just got to know each other, and there were no uncomfortable questions, and we've dealt with it. And, it's just been, again, I think a revolutionary change. And the good example that he pointed out was design and the informed consent. The patients just had a lot of questions about it, and we were able to revise it to answer many of those questions, with the objective being to come up with a way and an approach that would encourage patients not just to join, but to participate and stay throughout the duration of the project. So, how we doing on time? Anybody got to watch? All right. Everybody looks at clocks nowadays. Are there certainly any other questions? Because Dr. Starr is involved in a number of different, really,
Do I have 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
Give me 2 more minutes.
Go forward.
Okay. All right. So, thank you. So I want to show you another thing we're working on, because, again, I'm showing you pieces of things that are going to directly affect you. So one of the things that we had a meeting that Richard was at, may have even led this breakout group, actually, on the electronic health plan and how to actually use it better for kidney disease. The meeting came up with a couple of different ideas, but to me, the killer app, the killer idea was this electronic care plan. So what is this? So when you leave, how many of you have been hospitalized in the last 6 months? You've got a healthy group. Usually it's more than that. Okay. So, and when you left the hospital, they gave you a stack of stuff, right? And was any of it intelligible? No. Okay, that's my point. Okay. My father's been hospitalized a couple times, and he comes home with 50 pages of total, thank you, garbage. Okay.
From Dr. Fadum.
All right. So what we thought, or sorry, what we heard, never mind thought, what we heard patients wanted was a package of information that could follow them as they went from hospital to dialysis unit, back to the hospital, back to the unit, to the transplant unit, et cetera, that had the, quote, stuff, the data, that they are interested in, not to keep the hospital out of legal liability for X, Y, and Z, but they wanted to encapsulate, what do I have, what are my important lab tests, what important decisions have I already made about access or dialysis or transplantation, so I don't have to repeat that same thing each time. So right now the status quo is very complicated and completely disconnected. This slide really doesn't help show that, but everybody's talking to everybody and stuff gets lost and you can't find the medical records and God knows what happened in that hospitalization anyway and what meds were you discharged on and I don't know. Okay, so what we are working on and actually beta testing at NIH is an electronic CKD care plan that will facilitate, I'm going to read this because it's really good, the longitudinal transfer of key patient data and decisions from site to site to site. Okay, longitudinal meaning over time. So it tracks not just the lab data, but key decisions. It will get automatically populated from the electronic medical record. It will enable all the users, the social workers, the dietitians, the clinicians, the docs, the patients, hospice, whoever, to look at it with their own view of it so they can pull out quickly what they might need and not have to go through the whole thing. So transfer information and integrate, what we want to do is integrate this health plan, this care plan, sorry, into the electronic medical record. Okay? This is a wireframe. It's going to look something like this. Don't take this too seriously, but it's going to conclude what matters to patients, what makes a difference to caregivers. So immortalizing the decisions that have been made. They can be changed, but at least there'll be a record of, I'm in CKD stage 4, and I've been thinking about what kind of dialysis to use. There was a discussion earlier about patient choice. This can incorporate some of the educational materials also to allow you to make an informed choice about what you want to do. Incorporate those decisions into this so when you get sick and end up in the hospital and are really, really sick and can't remember, or your head's spinning, this will have in it what decisions you made 3 months before. Okay? We're developing the data standards we need to do this. We're going to meet national certification. And it's actually being piloted at the NIH Clinical Center right now. Okay. So another thing that we're trying to do to help the CKD community, looking for the black holes, the areas where it's been difficult to innovate, trying to come up with ideas to help the patients. Thank you all very much.
I hope folks appreciate the fact this is literally one of the top scientists in the United States that works for the federal government for you. And the fact that he was able to come down here and be with us is how serious NIH and NIDDK is about getting your voice. So think about what was presented, because we do have a communications plan. I'm usually very aggressive about getting the patient voice out, but we do it in sequence with our federal partners so that the timing makes sense. But I have to tell you, this has been a special opportunity for AAKP to have CMS here and NIH, NIDDK. And as I said yesterday, a lot of people say different things about the United States Civil Service. I happen to be a former chief of staff for the United States Civil Service as a political appointee. My father was a civil servant. But when we say somebody's a civil servant, this is the type of person that they're talking about. Those who serve you for the pleasure of serving to advance science. And so it's with great honor that we also award Dr. Starr a public service award from the American Association of Kidney Patients. Thank you.
The official handoff. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate it.
We'll now take a brief break, and then back in here is another session. I think in here is veterans. And Ed Hickey and Premier Roy, and Veterans Transplant Association, Duranta Briggs will be here. It'll be a very interesting session on VA healthcare. Thank you.